Happy birthday to you.
So personal things I do is make sure that taps are not running all the time. I'm running solar for heating my water systems at home, using solar inverters as opposed to using direct grid or generator transporters, basically, or generator electricity. So being in the agricultural space, I feel like rain patterns and sort of change in rain seasons is a big worry for all Africa and the whole world. If you look at kind of what's happening in the global scale in terms of food scarcity, and I think that's one of the biggest worries, and that should be a global level worry. I think we need to focus more on sustainable agriculture. We need to make sure that we're not depleting resources. We're really pushing ourselves to become the breadbasket of the world, and I believe that's where Africa can really benefit, both from a climate perspective and from a regional perspective.
Currently, climate change is serious, and in this country, 80%. We are saying 80% of this country is like a desert. Only 20% is covered. So there is a serious need for people to be sensitized and to understand the reason why we need to protect our country. So this is an extremely serious conversation. It's not the beginning. We are going to have more and more of these conversations. And our prayer and hope is that this message gets to a lot of people, and that we all collectively get together and save our country.
I'm very big on eradicating plastics, so I try as much as I can to keep off plastics, number one. Number two, I conserve water. Running taps, we have to make sure that water is properly conserved. Number three, biodegradability. I am very big on biodegradable products as well. Africa, number one, has to be real itself with how we communicate climate. How are we presenting the most vulnerable people who are mostly affected at the forefront of these conversations? Are we looking at our financing mechanisms to ensure that the flow trickles down to the most vulnerable people? And those are the issues that are being highlighted here. Number three, are we preaching water and taking wine? Because we can talk about lowering emissions, we can talk about e-mobility, and then you see our leaders in convoys of 10 fuel guzzlers. Is it sustainable? Yeah, so those are the things we need to prioritize and actually be honest with ourselves.
I take personal responsibility. I'm very passionate about the environment, so I take time to plant trees. I think I have planted quite a number of those, and I continue to do that. I'm training my children the importance of not only trees, but also importance of using water in a responsible way. Every drop counts, and therefore, I believe that I'm playing my role to be Earthwise. At Nation Media Group, climate conversation is a big agenda for us because we believe that we have a role to inform the society, to educate the society about the effects of climate change, as well as what it is that we can do to be able to mitigate the risks that are facing our country and our world at large. And therefore, we have a huge responsibility as a nation, as a media platform, to continue to educate the population, and we will continue to do our part. And this summit was just the beginning. We're going to have many more forums that are going to be much bigger and better to continue to do this part of ensuring that we disseminate this information about the critical role that we all can play in mitigating the risks of climate change.
On a personal level, I look for opportunities that I can capitalize on, whether that's in the industry, looking at the HVAC industry, looking at single-use plastics recycling solutions. You know, there's all types of innovations, companies and solutions out there that can really help make marginal change. You know, there's companies like EcoFuel that can reduce carbon emissions within the current infrastructure of vehicles as we know it. You know, there's responsible ways to implement the usage of electric vehicle charging and things of that nature. So just educating myself and being prepared for the opportunities as they come. You know, the statecraft in Africa is, it has a history of being taken advantage of. So I'm hoping that the leaders here from African nations, in Kenya specifically, are prepared to do what's in the best interests of the Kenyan people, bottom line. I understand international collaboration is important with organizations like the G20, you know, the African Union being new to that will have certain implications. But if you think about COP28 from a policy perspective, you know, there are many different ways that policies can be negotiated, and I'm sure that the preparation of the leaders will continue to keep Kenyans' interests in mind, the region's interests in mind, and ultimately do what's best as global leaders. So I'm very confident in the leadership here. I don't believe corruption is, or anything. Not even the richest man in the world can stop God's plan. I don't believe that, you know, climate change is such a great issue that God can make a difference in it. So, you know, kudos to the leadership in their preparation. And I look forward to seeing great outcomes this year.
I'm Earthwise because I'm a policy champion. I promote youth engagement to international policy processes. I'm also Earthwise because I connect the policy and action. I'm an action-oriented champion on the local level, where in my community I try sensitizing people on the effects of climate change, as well, like to lead them in concrete actions on combating the 3 planetary crises in the broad sense. Well, as Africans, we need to ensure that we unite first. We've seen Africa's countries losing on the policy negotiation fronts because of disunity. As a continent, we need to actually promote international cooperation within the region and at the multilateral system in the global level. But again, also in Africa, we have resources. We have one of the biggest resources, I must say, is the young people that we have in Africa. So if as a continent we can invest in our youthful population, then we'll have got it right in so many fronts.
We as an organization have come up with games to really pretty much create awareness on climate change. We have virtual games which will be up in the next few weeks called Mtoto Gone Green. We also have a board game which is in the works. We're working on it as children. Again, these are ideas that we've come up as children ourselves.
The card game is actually, what he left out, the card game is called Climate Crusaders.
Battle for Sustainable Future.
Yes. So it's basically just to giving the issues that pertain in climate change, but allowing like people to really think on the solutions. Those are the different cards. But the other things we've done is when we attend these summits, we make sure to be knowledgeable. We don't go there ignorant. Yes. So we do a lot of research. That's why we are all actually journalists by Mtoto News. We write articles. We do various things, such as like in the actual summits, we are speakers. Alamin here gave the declaration. And we also just participated in some side events, both moderating and being in panels.
Young people, we are the people who will be left with the challenges of the world, the challenges of climate summits. We are the people who are getting the brunt of what is happening. So I believe that young people need to take this pace, ensure that they bring solutions, because young people have a lot of solutions. If they are given an opportunity, if they are able to be given even global opportunities like now COP28, then they are able to give those solutions and ensure that whatever the challenges they are facing, whatever they are going through is being captured, and they are able to give solutions from a point of experience, especially for the African young man.
Yes, I do believe I'm Earthwise.
How?
In the aspect where, so to begin with, I'm an
Please hold it
innovator.
closer.
I'm an innovator. So as an innovator, I provide innovative solutions, eco-solutions towards challenges mankind faces and also the environment faces. So we're looking towards building a nexus and also an equilibrium in the sense of, promoting environmental justice, economical justice, and also social justice.
How old are you?
24.
You're 24. Great. Alamin, how old are you?
I'm 14 years.
What does climate change mean to you?
Climate change is like the change in basically our normal atmospheric conditions.
That's a very scientific answer.
Right.
But as a 14-year-old who lives in Kenya, how has climate change impacted you?
Climate change it has impacted me in various ways, and mainly negative ways, if I'm saying the truth. Some, it makes me even start to think about the indigenous communities that are out there who are already adapting to climate change, not knowing that climate change is it's not a good thing. Yeah.
So what would you like to see out of this conversation today?
Hopefully, the fact that youth's opinions have been heard. I mean, we're youth, yeah? We're children. We've been seen, yes, but we want to be heard and want to also be engaged.
So you want your voice heard?
Yes.
Great. Upendo, you have such a beautiful name.
Oh, thank you.
And you're a reporter from Toto News.
Yes.
What's that like? What kind of stories do you report on?
Okay, in Toto News, the stories we produce are mainly just anything concerning children.
Okay.
If we are going to stay on topic, I would say how climate change has affected children. We would go to the actual events such as the African Climate Summit, as well as the Children Pre-Summit that was held before it. So basically, as a reporter, I am to highlight the issues that children face. Because one of the things that in Total News you learn is that we feel it's best to use children to speak for children.
Okay. Use children to speak for children.
Yes.
And as you speak for children, what are some of these impacts you're seeing on children when you tell your stories?
Well, actually, again, if I were to stay on topic, climate change, if I were to dive into the part of droughts, it has affected so many children in which that some children, they might actually have to be changed, like their status, they're no longer children, they're no longer human beings in some people's eyes, in their community's eyes, as in they can turn into a currency to be exchanged in marriage, in which just because due to drought, cattle is dying, the vulnerable are dying, there's no way they can earn a living or stay afloat. So they exchange their children for livestock. Hence, they can at least sustain the rest of the family. If we were to dive into floods, the drainage system. When it rains, the sewage rises up. A lot of the time, some children might accidentally get caught up in that water while they're playing. They'll obviously contract some diseases, as well as some water actually. And I've seen this actually happen around my compound. In one of the homesteads there, due to poor drainage, the sewage water would always enter the house. It would flood the entire house anytime it rained.
Yes.
So now that water becomes contaminated. Some people actually try to get water, preserve rainwater. But now because of that poor drainage, it ends up contaminating water. They can't use any of it. And they go about it as if there's a drought. They can't drink water. They don't have water, but it's only because there's contamination. So those are some of the things we've seen in Total News, but that's only staying on the topic of climate change.
Okay. Now, Alphonse, the African Youth Climate Assembly was very actively involved in the African Climate Summit, and you also had your own parallel summit happening just before the African Climate Summit. Given following the results of the African Climate Summit and the Nairobi Declaration, do you believe that the voices of the African youth were sufficiently captured and heard at the summit?
Yeah, thank you, Zainab. I think yes, and I would say the strategy was right, to be honest, on promotion of youth involvement in not only Africa Climate Summit, but in policy making processes in the broader sense, especially in the multilateral system. So if you see it, I mean, young people have, or rather children and youth for that matter, they've been known to, you know, to be kind of stubborn. If you ask some policymakers, they'll tell you that children, young people are just out there protesting. That is the only value they can bring to these processes. But actually, we used the Africa Youth Climate Assembly ahead of the Africa Climate Summit to turn around that kind of mentality and showcase that young people can really self-organize. They can work within the right structures, do policy discussions, capacity building, and even come up with policy propositions and present to the highest levels at the heads of state. And I think that's what happened during the Africa Climate Summit. So to me, in that case, it was a success. Thank you.
It was a success. Dr. Sano, Alphonse there said that a lot of people look at young people as noisemakers. That's the only value they can bring to the table. Is that what do you think? How do the different generations prioritize issues of climate change in Africa? The mic is on.
It's on. Okay, thank you. It's okay to call me Philip, so that I feel young as well.
Okay.
It's good. No, I think three important points. One is that the first and important thing that we are doing now is having this intergenerational dialogue. It's not always been there. We have to deliberately create that space so that it's there. The second thing I wanted to say is, so the team here is, if you look at the global environmental challenges, including climate change challenges, really we have a generation that started all this, catalyzed all this movement in 1972. I am almost the third generation. This is the fourth and fifth generation. So we already have that intergenerational continuity around dialogue. And the space for young people, children and youth is being expanded as time goes by. So right now, as Alphonse said, when you have any major policy decisions on environment, on development, there's now space for young people. In fact, as a matter of fact, even recently the UN Secretary General created an office for youth. It's because of the work that all these young people have been doing. But I also wanted to say the third thing is also very important, that this generation also is the generation that has the most opportunity to make the biggest change because of technology and the kind of transformation that we are seeing in terms of technology. So compared to my generation and the previous generation, they have everything at their hands. They just need, I think, much better political will and a little more support here in terms of finances and other things. But we are very confident, I think they are in the right direction.
You mentioned that young people are now starting to get involved in these environmental spaces and even being involved in decision making. These are not just formality involvement whereby you're told, okay, just tell us what you think, but at the end of the day, it doesn't matter because the policy has already been predetermined or the outcome has already been predetermined. Have you seen, are these voices of the youth actually captured in these policies?
Yes, they do. As a matter of fact, it's a principle that's now being enforced. But also, even if you look at, okay, I'll give you an example. We work a lot where I work. We work a lot with schools also because we want to work with the teachers and help them understand how they can bring about the knowledge of science from climate and other environment challenges and use that as part of the education. But now when I go to schools, actually, I realize that the students in the school now elect their leaders. When I was in school, it was the opposite. You are appointed by the principal and the teacher. And when they're elected, actually, they are actually consulted, not just by the school administration, but even by education officials. When they come to the school, they have to look for the student leader in the school. So I think it's changed quite a lot. I don't think it's tokenism. I think that space is going to recognition and acceptance towards contribution of young people.
Alamin, have you felt your voice captured in any of these policies or even the Africa Climate Summit? Were you involved in the Africa Climate Summit?
All right. So the Africa Climate Summit, the only way we were able to even attend was through us children themselves. I mean, children from all over Africa wrote to the president of Kenya to allow children to come to attend the Africa Climate Summit. Even after attending the climate summit, I will